Okay, we're going to continue with the sessions. I have Saban Nam from Bromium, and he's doing a ransomware demonstration.
All right, thanks. All right, good afternoon. My name is Saban Nam. I'm with Bromium, and I was asked to do a demonstration of cyber ransomware. The reality is that takes only about 2 minutes, so I have to figure out what else to fill in the other 40 minutes with. So I was asked also to talk a little bit about the state of cybersecurity today. So we currently support roughly a million number of users around the world. For a large percentage of that is within the federal government itself. So we have a good basis of understanding of what is afflicting most enterprises today. What we found is that based on architecture alone, for 20, 30 years now, most enterprises have been implementing layers of various different defenses. And the reality is they're all heavily dependent on a very common signature-based architecture, which results in compromises. And those compromises, there's this issue of dwell time. And the dwell time, if you think about it, once you've been had, you don't know about it until you know about it. And that time from being affected to the time you actually know about it is considered the dwell time. And the challenge with it is that whenever you look at the various different layers, until your SOC or your cyber incident response team has been informed, the adversary is inside. And once you've identified it, then what you do is you actually spend your time trying to remediate or evict the actual actor. There's a tremendous amount of time that transpires between knowing about it and the time you can actually get them out. In most compromises, it'll take 2, 3, 4 different attempts to actually evict them, depending on how they persisted themselves. So that's the real challenge right now. And if you think about roughly 30 years ago, we started looking at data, we started looking at zeros and ones and storing data, and what were we protecting? Ultimately, we want to protect our intellectual property, whatever that might be. It might be a nice formula in terms of a pharmaceutical company. It could be PII. It could be Equifax. But ultimately, they want to be able to protect their intellectual property, what keeps them, whether it's mission or business, in place. And when you start thinking about what has transpired over the past 30 years, we've created a system and a network of systems where we allow users to interact with content and with data, doing their daily jobs. But as we've evolved and as we've started leveraging the internet and the cloud services, we realize that there are multiple tenants in the process. And by tenant, I mean there's the organization, there's the application, there's me, there's the OS. There are hundreds of applications, each one representing a different tenant. And so what we wanted to do is, because we as humans build very good walls, we started looking at firewall technology, and we were, in essence, trying to keep the bad people from coming inside the enterprise itself. The challenge is the adversary understands how to compromise the application, because that's where the vulnerabilities really lie. So they're able to bypass the firewall. So what did we do? We saw that the perimeter itself, what we thought was the outside, the edge itself of our enterprise, is actually shrinking. And because of the past 15 to 20 years of endpoint security, we've realized actually we need to focus on whatever happens between the chair and the adversary, right? And that's usually the user, the carbon-based problem. And ultimately, the challenge we have is our intellectual property, or what people are actively trying to compromise your systems to gain access to, actually safe? And what's the weakest link in all of this? And so we think it's that the fact is that the user themselves are the weakest link. We think that the user themselves accessing their content and doing their work, whether it is in a trusted world, meaning behind on your intranet or outside on your internet, the reality is every time a user interacts with any of this content, the application itself or the operating system could be compromised and leveraged against you, the enterprise. All right, so application segmentation is why I can do a demonstration of ransomware on my production machine off your network. That's a good thing. But ultimately, we can do it. Why? Because we have to be able to identify, is it really the application, is it the content, or is it the system resources and any vulnerabilities within that system that are going to be leveraged to compromise? And can we create a system of isolation? And so when you think about your perimeter and HUD, along with every other federal entity, every single endpoint is its own perimeter. And we're seeing this cascading effect where suddenly each and every single one of us could be targeted. And you'll see in some of the data we've collected, the vast majority of attacks are targeted to a specific user or a specific endpoint or a specific stack. right? So if we look at this, we have to be able to get to a point where we can change the rules of the game to one we can actually win. And I was with DHS this morning, and they basically said that last year they identified 350 million plus unique pieces of malware that attacked the US government. Right, that's a big number. And the challenge is not that we, Bromium, or any single provider is going to be a silver bullet. You should be looking at software-defined perimeter, you should be looking at multi-factor authentication, you look at the various different things, but ultimately we have to be able to narrow down the attack surface such that we can actually measure what is occurring when your user does things without the user really being bothered by it. So what I thought I would do is give you a very quick, I was asked not to go into a big Bromium discussion, but I'm going to give you an overview of what we do, which will allow me to do the demonstration the way I can. If you think back basically in the 60s when virtualization really started kicking in, it wasn't really until the 80s and the 90s when we with the former Zen team, actually started looking at can we create abstraction, virtual air gaps between systems so that we can actually have a Coca-Cola and a Pepsi-Cola sitting on the same piece of hardware, and the two are perfectly content with it, right? How do we separate and create isolation between different workloads so that we can actually operate in our own space without bumping into anybody else, whether it's good or bad? And so what we do is we leverage hardware-enforced virtualization. So what does that mean? Each and every single desktop, each and every single laptop that's been shipping for the past 5 or 6 years leverages Intel or AMD virtualization properties inside the chipset. We just take full advantage of that. So as a virtualization company, we're able to isolate those things that we don't want to trust. So ransomware, I'll show you a resume. HR is a big vector for most organizations because they have to open every single resume that comes in. And we're seeing an increase spiked right now. We've seen the pendulum swing from the browser attacks. Actually, it's moving straight into the Word and Excel attacks. Those are really the big sources of all things evil these days. How can we actually create a scenario where I can work with a compromised resume with ransomware without affecting the underlying host? Right? That's what we ultimately wanted to do. And we've done that. And so we think of Bromium as what the NSA has deemed application isolation and containment, right? So that's the category we fall into. And it's part of this layer, if you look at the NIST standards and you think about what DHS is doing with cyber.gov, they're looking at application isolation as one of the many different layers of technology one should apply as a federal entity or even on the private sector, be able to protect against the inevitability that there will be an attacker that wants to compromise your system. So when we build this world, we divide the world between what you know and trust and everything else. And by definition, if things sit on your intranet or you create a Word document on your system, ultimately we're going to call that more trusted than if I send you a Bromium presentation or one of the other folks that you deal with every day send you something from outside the organization. And by default, we want to say that if you didn't create it and you don't know it and it's not sitting within your environment, don't trust it. Why? Because you just don't know what could be sitting in that Word document. Is it a PowerShell script that's going to escalate privilege? Is it a ransomware that's going to basically not only encrypt the local drive, but if you're using cloud services, we're seeing a lot of malware attackers now going after those specific components that tie to your cloud infrastructure. So you can back it up all you like, but they'll go ahead and compromise how it is you can gain it back, right? So we want to carve the world out from your internet browsing out to the internet or any of your partners that you might not manage their infrastructure. Your Office suite, so your Word documents, your Excel, your PowerPoint, as well as any of the plugins that apply. So your IE browser with Flash or your Chrome with whatever it might be in terms of Java. But we have to be able to solve for this in such a way that if there is an unknown attack or a known attack that is going to leverage a vulnerability in the application, we have to be able to survive, although patching is an absolute must. It's not often that you can patch against an unknown attack, right? That's the fallacy in the architecture that is signature-based, right? We don't depend on those signatures. We don't depend on patches, but you should patch. I want to go on the record as saying you should patch. So what we want to do is we want to be able to say, how can we operate in an environment where something is running, not running AV, not running the newest versions of the various different OSs and applications, but still survive the compromise. And that's virtualization, because we don't depend on them. All right. So when there's an attack, in essence, we create a container, we allow the Word document to execute, And when it's provably bad, when we actually have identified that there's something bad, that's okay. We can throw that VM away, or a micro VM, which is the Bromium way, our technology. We throw it away. But before we throw it away, we have a black box flight recorder that allows us to gather all of the threat intelligence that actually, of the entire attack sequence, as well as the binaries, self-deleting stuff, whatever it might be that it might have occurred within the attack itself. We can give you full fidelity of the attack in real time without there being a compromise of the host, persistence, lateral movement, or anything within the enterprise. And that's what I'm going to show you now. All right, so I'm going to skip through this because I was asked not to talk too much about Bromium. But in essence, when you think about Bromium, it is a component part of your overall cyber resilience package, right? When you start putting an architecture together for cyber resilience, we are but the application isolation containment side. We're not AV, we're not ADR, we're not any of those other technologies. We don't bother with the perimeter. We feel that the perimeter sits at the endpoint. So we have an ability to say, if I see a 0-day before an Intel, Microsoft, or even US CERT knows about it, you'll know about it. You'll have the full forensics of it. And then what you can do within your own SOC is have full visibility into that entire kill chain and attack sequence. You can have all of the measurements, all of the hashes, all of the registry key file names, everything of that particular attack, and you can automatically scan your entire enterprise with anything else if you see it anywhere else within the environment. All right, so without saying much about the who's, we currently do support the .gov, .mil, and .ic environments within the US government, as well as the Canadian, UK, and other governments around the world. One of our largest deployments right now sits within a US.gov space. We have well over 100,000 users of our technology worldwide, and they were up and running in just a matter of months, just under 6 months, fully deployed and scaled with success. And success for us means we actually stop the bad stuff. Success is, yes, deployment is a must, but success for us is measured by how many times we get a call from the deputy CIO thanking us for being on that system because we kept them off the front page of WAPO. And cyber realities. This is really, I think, why I was asked to come up, because we are seeing a lot of this. Most of the technologies, as I've noted before, depend heavily on having some rationalization of what an attack might be, what it has been in the past, and then hoping that they can, whether it's machine learning, AV, whatever it might be, they can then anticipate what the next attack might be. But we also know that attacks are using machine learning and they're using artificial intelligence to create hashes on the fly in real time. 350 plus million pieces of unique malware identified last year alone. There isn't a system on the planet that can keep up with that, right? So this is really the state of every single enterprise today, be it public sector, private sector. You've been making the investments for 30 years based on the same architecture. And it's always going to be a cat and mouse game. There's always going to be the point where you have to patch. But that patch has to be authorized and tested, and then you actually have to get the patch. And then whether it's the OS or app provider or hardware provider have to give you the patch, and they have to know about it. So you can start seeing that this time span itself, on average, is about 200 days from the time they actually identify and actually get it out. So for 200 days, whether you know about it or not, you could remain vulnerable to it. And that is the state of the industry, and that's why we have all these issues. You saw Equifax. All of us were part of the OPM, right? We thought that was bad. Now the entire nation is in other parts of the world are now affected by it. And the state of security is we are now desensitized and numb to the realities of what that actually means. We're all going to get another letter in the mail saying that the very same entity that was supposed to protect your information is going to monitor its misuse. That is where we are. And none of us are really screaming and yelling about it, but this is really quite personal to us, especially the OPM part. So when you start thinking about how does industry respond to this, it's our responsibility to be able to provide private and public sector enterprises with various different options. Right? Our option basically says, if we can get away from signature-based solutions and we can integrate and embrace and extend what you currently have and allow isolation to sit at the point of execution, we're going to reduce the attack surface and allow an enterprise to survive even the worst nation-state attacks. And we have been very fortunate to be able to sit in briefings where our technology had actually stopped nation-state attacks, and we can tell you that they are trying to find other ways in. So what does ransomware look like? Well, let me just go through a couple things. We know that 75% of the breaches start with a compromised endpoint. We know that roughly 97% of malware is unique to that specific endpoint. That means they are targeting attacks to you and your endpoint. And measuring every single enterprise to determine what are you using. It's not a single attack, it's multiple attacks over multiple phases because they absolutely want to get to what you are owning. And what we look at in terms of the identity records stolen, this is, again, we're desensitized to this. We basically anticipate that nothing is private anymore and we're totally owned, and that is really the real problem. And IDC basically said that you basically have to find a way out of this cat and mouse game. You just have to fundamentally find a different way of architecting your cyber resilience posture by leveraging net new technologies and net new approaches where you're not looking at appliances and hardware as much as you're trying to figure out how does everything actually sit within my global enterprise? What does my user actually have to do? What does my user have to do in real time from that device, and what are they authorized based on their role and responsibility? And then can I allow them to go execute untrusted documents and PDFs and go to certain websites? Can I get them onto Twitter? Can I let them do things that typically we're not allowed to do from inside the federal space? Can I enable them to do that? Why? Because it might actually empower them. So let's go do the ransomware demo. This is really fun. All right, so, well, for you guys, it might be fun. Here we go. All right, so first things first, I want to make sure I'm running Bromium. Bromium sits seamlessly. This is what we call our live view monitor, or if you're familiar with virtualization, a status monitor. It basically shows that there's a workload, there's a VM running. Inside the VM, there is no real user data, no file system, no SAM database, no intranet access, nothing that actually identifies. It's actually a fake IP address. So when the attacker comes in, they have nothing. They can encrypt every single file in that VM, and it's a throwaway. So I have wonderful malware here. I'm going to double click. And this malware is actually kind of fun. So you notice that the VM was created, microvm 0004. In this case, the Word document, which is a resume, was created, and it actually requires user interaction. Right, so the malware wants to make sure that it knows that it's not being run in a VM at the perimeter, scanned, and then allowed to come into the enterprise. They want to make sure that there's actually a user on the back end of this. And what's happening right now is you'll see in a few seconds the doom, the red box of doom, which basically says things are encrypted. And so when you start as a user, you're going through this. It's just a resume. I could do whatever I want. And suddenly now this is live CryptoLocker. This is really bad stuff. And this particular type of attack, and I'm going to show you how we actually disseminate the artifacts of the attack, would have encrypted my network share as well. So they're actually looking to leverage your internet connections, looking for your network stores, and actually wanting to encrypt those as well. So if I were on the network within my enterprise not running Bromium, suddenly I've got a problem with ransomware. And here's the thing. Even if this is a known attack, if it gets to my machine, that means it's gone through the 13, 14, 15 different layers of cyber that you have, from the trusted internet connection, through the perimeter, through the network, through all the other endpoint technologies, and actually execute it. So Bromium is more of like a life insurance policy. You pay it because one day you're going to need it, right? So we're, in essence, we've been called this by a number of our customers, we're the last line of defense. But ultimately, if I want to, I can just throw ransomware away. Should I do the demo again? Like I said, it's really kind of short and boring, but if you like, I can do it again. This is apparently the Ukrainian ransomware attack. And it doesn't actually tell the user, because they weren't looking for money, they were looking to disrupt, right? And so there is nothing here that's going to tell the user or alert the user, by the way, we own you. But I'm going to go to the back-end infrastructure, which actually sits on my laptop, and I'm going to show you the threat analysis of what actually occurred within both of those, right? So we just ran CryptoLocker once and twice, and now I'm going to go to the back-end infrastructure. I'm going to show you, this is what we call a Bromium controller. So it was roughly about a minute or two ago that I ran the ransomware. It did not encrypt my entire machine, did not move across my network laterally to encrypt my network stores. And yes, I have one device because this is a local version of the Bromium Enterprise Controller, which would sit within your enterprise. We don't ask for your hashes. We believe that you paid money to have those hashes and they're yours. We don't need them to run them in our cloud. We don't really want them unless you really, in some cases we do have certain parties that do ask about it. But I'm going to, this is the first one I did just moments ago. And if you notice, there are two views to the overall SOC backend, right? So when there is an attack that's been identified. We believe that there are really two views that the SOC and the cybersecurity team or the CISO or the CIO are going to want. One is an overview. Tell me about the user, tell me about the machine, tell me about not the nitty-gritty details, but just kind of tell me what is it that actually occurred. And I can tell you within a minute or two from the time we destroyed the VM, the entire kill chain of the attack. Self-deleting malware, not a problem, we capture it all. We're able to represent all of this in a printable format, so if you need to hand it to somebody to say, this is what happened, this is when it happened, this is the user that it tripped over, and by the way, I have all of the particulars of that particular attack. I can look at the different categories, I can see what the different droppers were, but that's an executive overview. If I want to, I can, as an analyst, and mind you, I'm everything but an analyst, but even I can gather some information out of this. If I were to just run the mouse over, I can actually see the various hashes that were created on the fly in real time, meaning Bromium is in line between the user and the attacker. And Bromium is there to actually collect all of the particulars of this ransomware, this CryptoLocker. I can understand and immediately visualize what are those hashes. I can take those hashes and either with Bromium scan your entire enterprise to see, have we seen any of these pieces of evidence anywhere else in our environment, or do I want to hand it to you via syslog or API to your existing systems? If you have Splunk or anything like that, that's not a problem. We can hand it right to them. And now you can actually add it in an additive way to the rest of your overall SOC visualization. So as I go through this, I can actually tell you there's an API call, there's another API call, here is an executable, they actually got the command shell, and now we're going to start seeing how they are going to start encrypting the files. And all of these are, in essence, encrypted files. And I can, as much as I am, so bear with me, I'm going to start adding all the various things. You can see that I can categorize, based on the category, I can actually click on what I, as a SOC analyst, malware analyst, SOC team, whoever it might be, I can actually see what it is I need to know, PCAPs, network connections, whatever it might be, I've got that. Any questions? And I know we were asked to do questions at the end, but I'll ask now, are there any questions before I move off of the CryptoLocker demo? All right, great. So let me get back to presentation. All right, so we've done the ransomware demo. Again, I had to find the other 38 minutes worth of things to talk about. One of the things I wanted to to discuss is we at Bromium and any of the other companies that are leading edge right now, and we've been doing this for 6 years, and everything you've ever heard about Bromium over the past 6 years is probably true. When we first kicked this off, we didn't know we could pull it off. We had no management, we had no visualization, we had no way even telling you that we actually stopped an attack. It wouldn't deploy, we fell on our knees, we got back up. Customers stayed with us because they knew that architecturally this is the right way to go. So now that we've got what we currently offer as a solution available and deployed across many, many different private and public customers, we've been tasked with the government to find a way to survive probably the worst type scenario, right? When you start thinking about the external threat, we feel we've done a pretty good job solving that problem, right? It's demonstrated on a daily basis. Our customers say, hey, thanks very much. If they want to share malware samples with us, that's really great. We even have analysts that might jump in for some of the smaller organizations that don't have a full dedicated SOC team. But the one thing that has been keeping them up at night right now is, okay, we get that you can keep the external threat out. We know that you can solve for the PowerShell scripts inside of a Word doc. We know you can actually, all the root attacks, the rootkits, bootkits, all that fun stuff. We know you can solve that if it comes from the outside. But what happens if I have a compromised environment already? What if I'm already owned? How can I create, leveraging virtualization, a level of abstraction so I can actually allow for a secure enclave to be created below the kernel, because we're a hypervisor, allowing my user, even if the machine itself is cryptolocked, that cannot access the backend infrastructure, which is really important to me. Or if I have keyloggers on my system, or if I have any other type of attack sitting on my compromised system now. And so we realized that as we're doing this, we pulled it off. So we're almost there, right? We've got about another 9 months worth of work to do this, but really it's about use cases. So we found that if you have teleworkers, or if you have them sitting on their home machines, teleworkers on laptops that actually leave the building, if you start looking at other areas where you have to worry about the integrity of the system itself as already compromised, but still work in a secure enclave way where we can actually offer remote access in a trusted way, secure access to your Zen app farm for application virtualization, or your Zen desktop or Horizon View virtual desktop from a compromised state, we can prevent the host itself, the kernel could be exploited, from that moving laterally into your system. Right? That's the power of virtualization. So if I have CryptoLocker on one, the host gets owned, they will never, ever be able to get into the rest of my enterprise. Right? And so, just because we're in the mood of doing demos, I'll do one more demo for you, because this one will take 30 seconds. So we have the ability to run a VM if the kernel itself is exploited. We have the ability to run a VM with complete integrity of the back-end resources if the entire host itself has been exploited. Right? That's something that was really hard to do, but we're leveraging the very same hardware that's been shipping on all of your endpoints for the past 6 years. We're leveraging virtualization and hypervisor. It's the same hypervisor that runs AWS and Google and Zynga and Facebook. Right? So we're very familiar with abstraction and hypervisor work, but what if I were a merchant for one of the largest payroll companies in the world, and those merchants are not tied to their infrastructure. They have no idea of the integrity of their system. They don't know if there's already malware sitting on their systems, but they have to connect into the back-end resources of this merchant, of this payroll system, and they open that gateway up. What if malware comes in and creates net new employees with all these wonderful benefits, and suddenly people are making $500,000 a year, and it's not caught until the next pay period, right? We have to be able to leverage virtualization and abstraction and application isolation and containment so that the enterprise can survive the nation state or script kiddie attack, depending on which end of the spectrum it is. Protect against the greatest potential vectors, which are your browser, your documents, your media, but also protect against your insider threat that might be wanting to remove data, or if you're already compromised. All right? So those are my demos. I think that pretty much wraps up my presentation.